Hello and welcome to the Amber Stitt Show. I am your host, Amber Stitt, and today we have the host of The Rich Equation. Welcome, Ashish. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Amber. Pleasure to be here. Really excited for the conversation.
Well, do you remember about a year ago when I was a guest on your podcast? Did you know that that was maybe my second guest interview ever? Did you know that?
No, and you crushed it.
Well, you make it easy. So I was super excited that we had booked this time today. I didn't really look at the time frame of what was happening. So I have something to celebrate, and I think you do too. So I have just launched my 1-year anniversary episode. So what I did is I went back and I broke down 5 steps that we discuss on the Amber Stitt Show. It's called the Pathways of Peak Performance. So when I realized what this week was, and then I have you on my podcast, I mean, I learned how to be a guest and get over my kind of my nerves because I was on your podcast. Woohoo!
Nothing is by accident. Happy anniversary.
And we met each other on social media. So any of you guys in the audience that just don't understand why we might connect with a friend on LinkedIn or maybe have some engagement or just follow somebody that's interesting, you never know what kind of friendships can come about. But I want to take a pause and let the audience get to know you a little bit. And we'll let you talk a little bit about what you do. I don't want to call it a day job, but what do you do most of the time?
Sure.
And I want to talk about your podcast. So I want to give the audience a little bit of background on you.
So I live in California. I'm married with 2 kids. I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, 2 daughters. You're right about social media because I am new to social media and still learning and still understanding, but just amazed about how authentic you can build relationships on social media. And this is case in point. 1 year later, we're still talking. People think social media can be really transactional, but I've built some amazing relationships through social media, and there are quality people out there. So just encourage people to connect and be authentic. But grew up in Southern California. I am born and raised here. I went to school out in Boston. I came right back after the after the financial crisis. I have a finance and accounting background, and after the financial crisis, no one was really looking for finance jobs or things like that. It was really tight. So I fell into some family business, and I ended up starting a furniture company, and we specialize in hotel furniture. And honestly, sort of ignorance is bliss when you're young and you're not, you don't know too much and you don't overthink. There was just like this interesting opportunity to connect a few dots and just put your head down and get to work, really. And that was back in April of 2010. So I'm about to have my 13th year anniversary.
Oh, cool.
And so we started a pretty aggressive growth strategy for hospitality furniture. We built 2 hospitality case good factories, one in LA and one in Indonesia, and then slowly grew that into 3 go-to-market brands that now sell hotel furniture all across the US. And
very cool.
Yeah, so we've had a really great journey. We have people all around the world, in Mexico and China, and our headquarters is in LA, of course. So that's sort of my quote unquote day job.
Yeah. But don't stop there. Don't stop there. What else do you have time for?
Well, that actually was, I think, a really important journey for me because back in, I don't know, probably like 4 or 5 years now, I started having what was the success that other people thought I should have, or I told myself that I should have. I was making good money. I was the leader of a decent sized company. I had a lot of quote unquote flexibility and freedoms. And yet I was still like sort of unhappy or unfulfilled, let's call it. I was married. I think I may have just had my first kid. And I was sort of like looking myself in the mirror, and I always have like a spring in my step, but I was like, what am I springing for? Right. And so I went on this like journey of what does it really mean to be successful? And which is sort of the foundation of my podcast, which is called The Rich Equation, is what does it mean to be rich? And I'm fascinated with all aspects of life. Like, how do we live a 10 out of 10 in every part of our life? Not only just business, but also in our relationships, in our health, as a parent. And I'm definitely not a 10 out of 10. I'm probably like 3 out of 10 in some areas. But what's fun is the ability to like be curious and learn and constantly keep adapting and applying new processes, strategies to find what works for you in different seasons of your life, and leaving it all on the table, And so that's what our podcast is about. And we're starting to build a small community. But the best part about it is I get to have really stimulating and learning conversations with people like you. And it's like this never ending well of knowledge and energy, and so just super blessed.
But you forgot to talk about something that's coming up. You're like so close to this number that we're going to celebrate.
Today is our 100th episode.
So by the time this episode drops on my podcast, it will have been your 100th episode.
Yes.
So congrats on that. That is amazing.
Yeah. And I honestly, I have a really great team. AJ is like the pillar of our podcast strategy. And, I can't believe we've actually hit 100. One of the things I learned really profoundly during this last couple of years is I think that most successful people don't think so much about where they're at. They think more about just keep playing the game. Like don't worry about winning and losing.
Yeah.
Just stay in the game, stay playing. And I think through seasons of like ups and downs and recessions and all these things, it's really easy to, and I am really a big victim to this. Like when things are great, you think that, you're magic and you did everything. And then when things are bad, it's like, I want to throw in the towel. But I think what I've studied recently is that the most successful people just keep playing.
Yeah. And I feel like you have a ton of that on your podcast. If I listen in, I feel like you are running into so many different types of people and different stories. And so one thing I like about what you were mentioning is, okay, California, then you go off and you go to Boston.
Yep.
Part of, we'll dig into some of the steps of the Pathways of Peak Performance to really, I think you are a perfect person to kind of hit every category, because I think you've been there, and I think we're not done. And so we'll get to that here in a little bit. But for people that are, sometimes we just don't know what the end result is supposed to be. Like you said, you're playing this game. Maybe it's, I'm not an, athlete. I can't do the sports analogies, but like the long game or the short game, and golf is kind of like the opposite of, but just kind of staying the course and not always needing some metric or result. It can be very hard for the analytical people. But sometimes it's just that purpose behind what we're doing and what makes you feel good. And if we're changing lives, that always feels good. And so as you can affect other people through maybe a podcast or whatever it might be for you, I think for the listeners that will kind of hear your story as we go, I thought maybe you jumped into a business that was already established, a family business that already existed. That's not true. You started something completely different. And so when we have recessions or these things that we need to bounce back with resilience, maybe take a pause when something's really crummy. And maybe that's a way to pull an opportunity out of it and just pivot. And there could be something else that should happen because of that event. So I think you're living proof of that.
Yeah, I think all of that is true.
So since I've met you, I put together really the Pathways of Peak Performance were 5 steps that have been, I almost call it the collection of greatest hits over the last 10 years, really experiences of mine, people I've met, clients. And so we focus on talents first, and that is the foundation. And I've already talked with you a little bit before about things in your life, people that you've met. When I talk about focusing on talents, I think that if you understand who you are and you have this awareness and you give yourself some grace and almost have a laugh here and there, because we have this DNA, we'll say, that is us. And we're not trying to fix what we're not. We're really trying to develop who we are. And so if you say you're a 3 out of 10, but you're okay with that because you can't be great at all things, that's what a team is for. If we look at focusing on talents, in the last few years, you mentioned there were some changes. There was a lot of changes after Boston.
Yes.
Is there anything that stands out to you, whether it's a book, people? I know that you have a community that you travel with now. What could you speak to that might help a person in the focus on talents to have a takeaway of, maybe something will resonate with them that you've done?
Yeah, I think there's two things that have recently showed up for me that they haven't recently showed up, but like they're hitting me in the face again, right?
Yep.
I think, and you said this, I think that we have to constantly keep looking at ourselves and learning about what motivates us and why we do what we do. And so we'll call that self-awareness. We'll call that self-reflection, whatever. And you can meditate, you can journal, you can talk to friends, but like this constant exploration of who I am, why do I do what I do, and why, and what makes me tick. And the caveat to that is, I think that it's okay to change. Like, I think it's okay to change something that you don't like, or make a decision and then change your mind. I think there's a lot of stigma around like changing your mind, but like, you learn something today that's new knowledge, new information, new experience. If you don't change, you're being irresponsible.
Sure.
But yesterday you didn't have that information. And so what's wrong with changing your mind or changing your philosophy or changing the way you think about that? So I think that is something that is really easy for me to like get lost in and then get lost from. So, you go into these segments of like, okay, I'm really routine. Routine is a pillar of of the rich equation, because routine helps us stay present. It's help us stay in this consistency and harmony and what makes us perform and what makes us be the best version of ourselves. The moment I get off my routine, I get distracted. I get off track. I get lost in things that are perhaps not as important. So, and it's simple things, exercise, eating right, meditation, spending time with good quality people who challenge you or are honest, doing good things, very simple. And people know when they're not doing good things. It's really fun. Like, everyone knows, you just maybe don't want to face it, or you don't want to realize it or deal with it, but when you're not doing the things that are the best for you. Yep. And I think, and then the other thing that I would say that is one of my skills that I've sort of honed in on is I'm not afraid of being wrong.
Yeah, I think that's great.
I have a strong fear of failing.
Sure.
But I'm not necessarily fear of being wrong, like making a wrong decision or, saying something and being incorrect. And I think that I've learned how to be misunderstood and feel comfortable with being misunderstood, but it allows me to express and allows me to make decisions more effectively, more efficiently, and explore ideas more effectively. And that's kind of how I process. Some people process internally. I need to like talk things out and make a mess of it before I find the answer. So I don't know if that answers your question, but.
Oh yeah. Well, I think like even in medicine or science, we do things until we have new information, and then we go, okay. Yes. And if you say like you want to change something, it's almost like you're looking at the data and going, okay, how do we improve on this? So not that we're little robots, but our bodies and our brains, from what we learn about, like
absolutely,
Atomic Habits and some of those books will say the positivity of some of the brain matter that can change with some of these thoughts. So if you are not liking something, pay attention to that and then put a course of action in there that might change it. And so focus on talents could really be, if you're happier, I think that translates into your relationships, into business. So when you're off, like you're saying, when you're off, we got to figure out another way to get you back on track. So you essentially have principles, and a lot of our planning behind some of my strategic partners, we talk about principles being a third party entity. It doesn't take it, we're not going to get drama or personal. It's just, these are the ways to stay on track and prioritize and so on. So yeah, whatever the methods are for the person, like I notice all the books behind you, and it's like getting information. Some people like to read. I need a hard copy book. Some people need to listen to a podcast or watch a video. So finding whatever can resonate with you on your learning style. There's really no excuses. We have so much available to us now. So that's really exciting too. But the wellness component, I think you're on track with that. When you feel good, you're going to do better. And I know that when it comes to wellness, I think it's pretty unique that you do deeper dives into meditation. Can you speak about that a little bit before we go to the next focus area?
Yeah, I mean, I think like for whatever reason, I like to experiment. And I experiment with all kinds of things. So like you just mentioned the books, like sometimes I like to read, sometimes I like to audiobook, sometimes, sometimes I like to do this and sometimes I like to do that. Like I don't mind experimenting things, besides drugs, probably, to be honest, I'm not very experimental with drugs, but everything else, I'm very experimental.
For the audience.
So we won't talk too much about that, but I've been meditating, since I was sort of 10, but I don't think I really knew the benefits and impact and had the toolkit that I have now. And I feel like, for people who have heard about meditating or want to meditate, meditating can just be what you want it to be. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be what one person says. I think meditation is a simple concept of just learning how to sit with yourself and sit in stillness, sit in clarity, and sit in openness. And I think the uncomfortable part of that is why we need to meditate. So if we're always anxious and we don't want to meditate, that's why you should meditate.
Right.
If you can't stop thinking all the time, if you can't calm your mind and you can't get to the idea of, I can't sit for 10 minutes, that's exactly why you should meditate. Because I think that the power of controlling that and owning that instead of being victim to that is where the magic comes.
And I feel like it's like you're simplifying. So you're saying if there's too much chaos, we'll call it, maybe in the head, or there's too much going on, you might need to separate yourself from technology, maybe the people, maybe just the mind going to, and we all have spoken about, can't sleep at night because of a project, or I'm nervous about something, anxiety. That probably means you need to give yourself some space and be okay with the fact we're doing nothing.
Yes.
And that's very hard. And so I say, can I put the nothing time on the calendar and then maybe I'll do it, right? Because
I put it on my calendar.
My naturopath says that that's actually, you need to be doing that. Your brain needs that. So as we transition into focusing on money, this is probably an easy transition for you because I feel like I know what you're saying when it comes to this point where you're successful. And we see it with very successful people or celebrities or athletes where they hit this peak of performance and then they're still not happy. What gives? So when you started curating your podcast and your message and who you wanted to have on there, I know that there's a little backstory where you're saying, people and money and how they're comprehending what makes them rich. Can you speak about that piece or just really the foundation of your podcast?
Well, I think I'm still exploring. I'm still learning. I think ultimately it comes down to everybody's individual relationship with money. Mm-hmm. And I think there's two concepts here. We'll call it money as a material transactional thing that is really easy to be a slave to, let's say. We can use it as utility. We can use it as a tool. People have a relationship with this objective thing called money. And I'm still learning my relationship. I still find things that I'm not happy about in terms of my relationship with or for money. And then there's this other component that we uncover, which is like real freedom and wealth and time and abundance. And that is actually more of an energetic thing than it is about a objective thing. So and there's a lot of different philosophies that I'm learning about all of this, but what is freedom? And this was one thing that I really explored in the last 100 episodes.
Yeah.
For me personally, is what makes us feel free, right? So you could have $1 million. You could still not feel free.
Right.
You could have $1 billion. You could still not feel free. You could be poor and you can still not feel free. So where does freedom come from? It definitely doesn't come from money.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what your economical status is because we know just post-COVID, more awareness with mental illness and stress. And we've seen people talk about it more, thankfully, but there's something to be said about that. So we can't chase that material aspect. Yes. And sometimes, I don't know, sometimes it just could take people time to go through some problems and obstacles to get to that point where you can really feel what it's like to not have that freedom. And then that kind of teaches us. And I think that's why you go back to your foundations and your principles, right? Because if you can create this baseline of good And when you go off track, because we're humans, then you know how to get back on the train tracks, right?
Yeah. I mean, and I'm no different. Like I literally, I want to share with the audience, like I'm still trying to figure it out. I make mistakes. I'm like, oh man, I'm being too greedy. I'm behaving in a way looking for income.
Yeah.
I don't want, is that in alignment with what I want or not? Right. Maybe there are times where no, I do. I want to go chase something and feel worthy, and therefore this is going to monetize that process or that strategy for me. And so I'm going to do it that way, but I have to create this awareness, not this dependency.
Right.
And I think that I'm still learning. I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm still trying to, I don't think it's a number. I think a lot of people think about wealth or richness or financial freedom or whatever in terms of a number. I think that is not it. At least in my experience.
I love that you say that, because what we know over time, we talk about retirement, and that's a whole other topic. We won't dive into it. When you're talking about financial freedom, is it truly, I need to put in X to have X million by the time I retire? Is that really freedom? What you and I have seen, I think that you would say this is true. Most people don't have savings, and most people get to retirement. And then what? We're still in trouble. So if you're not chasing that dollar, but chasing the purpose and the value, while still being financially savvy, there's something there. So we really need to be focusing on that freedom aspect. I mean, that is huge, and it can be different for different people.
And I think you hit it right on, because I think a lot of people think about retirement and they think about, okay, I need to do whatever I can right now to build enough of a cushion or whatever they call it. Yep. So that when I'm 65, the team or my people can tell me that I now can be free. I now can live the life I've so hard worked for, but I can barely climb a hill. I'm too old to travel. Yep. I'm too, I can't spend that much time in nature. So like
what
is all this for?
The other part of this too, part of my journey, focusing on talents and receiving information, working with people that are different than you, seeing and understanding that people are different. We want different people. That's what completes a really nice picture, is that your spouse or partner is not going to see money the same way. And I feel like we have to be okay with that and work together and not be upset with people that they don't read the words the same way and then build their goals the same way. And so I don't know if you've seen any truth to that with your interviews or even in your business or with your family.
Oh, yeah.
About that being different.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think everybody has their own relationship with money. And as you're exploring and creating more awareness in your relationship, everybody else is going to start to become more aware of their relationship. And it will not always be pretty. It will not always be so easy and clean and comfortable, because these are deep rooted narratives and explanations of why we behave and why we do what we do. And some people are happy with that narrative, and God bless them.
Yep.
And so, I mean, I see it everywhere. I see it multi-generational. I see it within the spouses. I see how it passes on to kids, how people treat their parents when they get it.
Yep.
So it's really fun to be able to, I just would recommend people just stay the observer. Always just keep observing and seeing and observing.
Yep. So. Yeah, I agree with that. So part of really just wanting to have that understanding, got to pull that teamwork together and just have, again, some grace that people are going to just see things differently, but it doesn't mean you can't work together on it. And again, there's new technology and new developments to come. So we have to be able to, go along with that. And so, like you said, keep learning. I think that's great. Focusing on risk is my next category. And so focusing on risk management can sound so corporate. And in my world, it can also include protection. Okay, for example, I was just in a call talking about the amount of people in California compared to the amount of people that insure for earthquake insurance. It's like a tiny percent out of 40 million or something. I forget if it was a state or a city we were focusing on, but that's a real risk, right? And so, but even coming out of not even thinking about products, but if you're thinking about the protection, transferring risk away, I just start with going with the basics of keeping organized. What does that mean for you, whether it's for yourself individually or business? Are there any tools or resources that help you? And again, even as an employee under an employer or a business owner or family member, I think we all need to try to bring that emergency plan kind of into the home so that if there is something that we're facing, we can handle it with resilience. Is there anything you'd want to share? Just, we were to say risk management for you.
That's great. I love this pillar. I think risk has a negative connotation, the way that you kind of were just explaining it, but it doesn't have to. Risk comes in a lot of different perspectives and the way we see it in the world. If we go to Disneyland, there is risk management everywhere.
Okay.
But it doesn't show up as risk management. It shows up as process. It shows up as culture. It shows up as people. It shows up as
I like that.
Energy. So they're risk managing in every interaction with every single client, right? The way they sweep the floors, the way they decorate things, the way they do safety checks, the way they hold the lines, the way they do their shows, like whatever. I'm just I'm just kind of going off the cuff here.
Right.
But it doesn't have to look and feel and touch like risk. It can be just as equivalent and part of the experience. I think process is huge.
Yep.
I think processes in the way we manage our money and the processes in which we treat our people in our family, how we think about our budget accounts or whatever, right? All these processes we put into our life. If you don't have processes, that's when you have risk.
Yeah, I love that. And that's where I just want people to take action. But then why do people hide or shy away from it? Neuroscientists have been working with a team of friends of mine, and they're just saying that thinking of something bad, we talk about energy. So if you think of something bad and you're trying to protect against that awful thing, some people just go, well, I don't want to even think about it. It's going to happen. But we know things can happen outside of our control. So part of my messaging is, okay, let's, like you said, build the systems and processes, and it's got to start in your home. So really, if there is a fire drill, we had something with bad medical labs. I tell this story sometimes in presentations where my husband had these labs come in, and we thought we were driving to Mayo Clinic in Arizona, and it could be a really bad day and a pretty rough couple months, but it was the wrong set of labs. I don't know whose these belong to, but we retested and he was fine. But that moment of 2 hours waiting for the retest to come through, we did not cause more stress because we had all of our systems in the household. Policies, emergency contacts, business information, everything's in a spot that we can find without each other around. We have folders online, basically, but we just had to worry about the here and now and not all the other things.
You talked about this actually on my podcast, and I'm going to reiterate it because what you're talking about, I think more people should actually listen and do this. Like, put together a binder. For if something were to happen to somebody in the house, either husband, wife, or father, daughter, whatever, if something were to happen, is there a book that everyone can go to know what to do? Where are all the accounts? Who do I need to call? Who are my emergency contacts? Like almost like a 911 book. And
it's almost like back when I grew up, I'm a 1980s baby. We'd have the cupboard, and inside the cupboard we had a list of the emergency contacts for the neighborhood. Hey, mom, if you're babysitting, who do I call? We don't even have a simple spreadsheet online that we can all look at from our devices. And I will say this in presentations, and I travel, and I'll be leaving. I remember going to the airport and seeing some of the attendees, and they go, 60 years old, Amber, I don't even have that. And I do financial planning for clients. Okay, we got some work to do. But once you do it and kind of audit the system, like mic check, it's done. And you just can add a couple new things here and there, but it feels so good when it's completed. And I just want that for people because it helps us get over some of the rough stuff that, comes our way. So
yeah, I think this concept of risk means when we have like open energy loops. So like by us not having our financial stuff in a binder, I think to me that's an open energy loop I'm going to have to pay the consequences for later. And
that could be drastic. And we won't go into those awful stories today. Yes. We're going to be uplifting. So the next focus area is focusing on marketing and technology. And so some people go, well, does that really apply to me? But going back to the step one, what do you enjoy? Do you enjoy marketing? Okay, if you don't, what apps or technology that can help you be more an efficient person? I didn't know if you have anything that is usable today to share, but just almost is if there's a takeaway. We just talked about a binder, so maybe something online that the family can share. But is there anything that you are just like, oh my gosh, you got to do it?
Well, I'll make it super simple for people. Like, I live by my calendar, and like everything that I want to do or I hold myself accountable to do or is in my calendar, and it's all color coded, and it has like meditate, get the kids ready for school, date nights, meetings, get this done, get that done. I mean, without getting too complicated, people underutilize how they use their time. And the calendar is a technology that it's simple. You don't have to remember anything. I mean, my wife knows too. Everybody in my world knows, like, if it's not in his calendar, it ain't happening.
Right.
So very few, maybe there's consequences to that. I don't quite know yet, but there are things that are planned on my calendar, almost a year out. And it just keeps structure and allows me to do what I want to do when I want to do it. And then audit your calendar. Like,
ooh, what do you mean by that?
Meaning, like, what did you do that you shouldn't have done? What did you do that was a waste of time or that didn't give you energy or, things like that. So audit how you use your time. I think because we don't use a calendar, we're not really intentional about how we use our time.
Yep.
And by using the calendar and then learning about, okay, this was a waste, this was not, I was inefficient here, I can become more productive. And then like silent time we talked about earlier, like do nothing time.
Yeah. And that one, it's almost like I can pay to go to Pilates, and if I don't show up, they'll charge me. So I don't know how we can penalize ourselves. Maybe we have to have like a cookie jar. If you don't do the quiet time, you have to put money over here. But I guess you win regardless But sometimes,
yes,
I mean, we have to take it more seriously. I know that my husband and I, before we worked together, we did Google Calendar share. And so it wouldn't be like, okay, we could know what on the weekends, if there was some free time to connect with friends or if the kids need to go somewhere. It just makes it super simple. And you just get in the habit of inviting. It's kind of weird. Hey, honey, we're going to happy hour. Put that on the calendar. But I think it does help. And then you could see, are you weighted down by certain things? And what should we kind of, like you said, audit? So I do like that. And it's probably underutilized. But I will say, I do like having a hard copy kind of paper small one. And my friends make fun of me. But sometimes when I'm out at an event and we're looking, I like to see everything just quickly. And they say, Amber, you need to start using your online. And I'm like, trust me, my online is there. But sometimes I like that paper, old school. But I'm, maybe that's Gen X and millennial. I do a combo. So focusing on community, you've been doing some unique things with your tribe of people. You just got back from a trip. I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit, but focusing on community, when I first developed this category, it was really around the time of COVID and people's businesses were shutting down. And it's like, how do you keep the lights on if you're virtual? Or if you're in an in-person business, how do you just keep that momentum going? And so it's really going back to a community of maybe friends. You're a partner that you can maybe refer a client to if times are tough and you're out of town, you're sick, maternity leave. But then there's this mentorship component, mentee opportunities. And so for you, you're involved in a few things and you have a community on your podcast as well. But do you want to speak a little bit about your community and how that kind of fills your, what do they say, fill the boat?
Yeah, I think this quote hit me really hard last year. And the quote is, happiness is only real when shared. And I think for a long time, we, as an entrepreneur, there's a phrase that people say all the time about like, it's lonely at the top. Actually, it's not really lonely. There's just fewer people that are willing to live that lifestyle. And so by creating a community, it's actually helped me big time. Live the fullness of life without getting wrapped up in stories that don't serve me. So for me, community means people that are vibrating at an energetic level that is similar or close to yours. And it doesn't have to be the same. Hopefully it's
better
more,
so we can learn.
Because we're all vibrating and so it pulls you up, and it's a community that you're able to live your most authentic, real self and learn and experience life and make mistakes and be safe in all of your stupidity. Because we all make stupid mistakes and we all do stupid things and we have all these flare ups and that's just how life is. But the community allows you to stay in an echo chamber where you can continuously move forward. At the Rich Equation, we started building obviously a podcast following, and that's kind of our community. Although, as you know, you don't get as many great like the information is really poor, so you don't exactly know all the humans that are doing it. So you have to funnel them into your community.
Sure.
And then we started doing these curated experiences. We call them epic men's trips, where we take 10 or 12 guys on a really curated adventure and we go deep together. Often they're strangers, and we build community that way. And it allows people that are living life to get real really fast, and to have fun and experience like all of these different emotions, right? Joy, sadness, fear, anxiety, all of it in a really short amount of time, really authentically. And we've been able to build some really great long-term lifetime type of relationships that are just amazing and beautiful. And I think in that authentic community, like all the magic happens, right?
Oh, yeah.
You not only are you friends, you live life together. I have this phrase that I'm using a lot. Like, I want to find people in my life that I want to live life together. So what does that mean, right? In our communities, what does that mean? You want to raise kids together. You want to run businesses together. You want to build wealth together. You want to travel together. You want to make mistakes together. And not everybody fits in that category.
Well, let's pause there. I mean, you mentioned something about making sure you're around the right people. And sometimes it's unfortunate if people that have maybe grown up with you don't really belong in the same part of your chapter of your life potentially. And it's not to be mean about it. It's just sometimes if they're not moving forward in like a direction, like you're saying, vibrating at a higher frequency, it might not be good for you. And we might need to move on and persevere and find people that have that energy. And I've seen some of that in my own life. And it's kind of awkward when you're like, oh, wow, I'm not connecting the same way with these people. But then it's like, what does the opposite mean? I am creating all these relationships. And you mentioned businesses. What I want people to know is like, even if you meet people and they're not even in your home state. I mean, look at what you've done. You've met people from all over
the world.
There's potential business opportunities that are brewing. We are not at this point. It's kind of a global event now. I mean, look at the businesses you have on a global nature, but you can meet people from all over and you could still live. How did you say that? Live together?
Live life together.
Live life together. But it doesn't necessarily always mean they have to be in person with you. Right?
Nope.
And that's what's been really cool about the last, I would say, 4 or 5 years is introverts can do their thing either online or for a limited time by going and seeing their friends, either local or flying to them. Extroverts can go to town. And the people in the middle, you build your calendar kind of with what fulfills you and how you are making your own money. But it's so amazing. We have so many options now.
So many options. I think that idea that we do have so many options can also be a little debilitating. So like, just take action, do something, just do it. And then learn that, that's not what I wanted to do. Then try something else. Don't get lost in all the optionality because we do have so many options and you can connect with so many people nowadays. Yeah. And it should not be used as an excuse to do nothing. Yeah. Like, do something and then learn and then adapt and then try again. And
well, for any of the audience, the members that need to find a tribe, we're happy to help point you in the right direction, coast to coast. So I think that's a perfect place to land. What do you think?
I love it. I love it. Congratulations on everything you're doing, girl. I love it. I'm proud of you. Such a great thing you're doing. I don't think people realize that this is all about community. Mm-hmm. Like, you're not making any money by doing this podcast. Like, it's about giving and serving and building trust.
Yourself out there. I mean, how do you feel as a public speaker per se? You personally, are you the kind of person that could just hop on a video and just naturally have the knack? Is that your style?
Knack in terms of
public speaking. I love to be in front of people talking. Is that your thing?
No, not in big public settings. Like, if I know my crowd and if I know my crowd and I want to pour into them, I have no problem. Keep going. Mm-hmm. But if I'm not like a public speaker type of guy.
Well, and the reason that I'm saying this to you is a lot of people, if they're asked to be on a podcast, some people get so nervous. I've been there. I think you've probably been there. But once you try it, it's not so bad. And so what I want to close with, though, is that really you can try different things like we've mentioned, but when you're seeing people out there actually doing the work, it takes a little practice, and we've all kind of had this stumble and kind of trial and error. And for me, larger audiences are hard for me, and I'm a chatty Kathy, and I can just go whoop and forget my thoughts, where a conversation's a little bit easier. So I just want people to know that there's more vulnerability happening here, but just give it a try, give something new a try, and just see where it takes you. And so finding your community, there's ways to find that support and motivation, but yeah, build out that community. I think it's really important, and it has been for me. So, and
Love
congrats to your 100th episode. I can't wait to hear it. So, all right. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. And again, congratulations and absolute pleasure.
Awesome. Have a good one.
You too.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of The Amber Stitt Show. For more information about the podcast, books, articles, and more, please visit me at amberstitt.com. Until next week, enjoy your journey at home and at work. Thank you for listening.